Now up, we have Tina Blaine, also sometimes known as Bean, and Linda Jacobson, two of our favorite cultural hackers. Tina, a virtual reality pioneer and also remembered by 90s Cyber Freak, part of Dikuku, the multimedia ensemble that everybody fell in love with. Her good deeds since then are in the area of technology and are sharing too many to list right now. But she is joined by Linda Jacobson, who is known for her brilliant technocultural writing and for her relentless exploration of and use of virtual reality for many good things, particularly in letting and assisting older persons in their daily lives. Thank you.
This is Bean. She goes by Bean. I'm Linda. I go by Linda.
I need to check and make sure that we are on the rolling
Have you, from back in the day, has anybody been around and had seen or experienced the band Dekuku? We got.
Actually remembered.
Okay, thank you. So. It was when Bean was in that band that we met, and it's partially a big reason why we're here is because of our participation in that kind of post-industrial neo-classical cyber tribal world music thing that was going on. Oh.
So we wanted to share a recent accomplishment. Linda was just awarded to the XR Hall of Fame, and I had to ask her, what's XR, Linda?
All right. Beans, you've always been my best cheerleader. So this is an industry honor. I work in the field of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. So those are known collectively as extended reality. And that's what XR is. So thank you for doing that. So yeah, so that's next week. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, kind of cool. She's going to get a big award next week. There's going to be stars around her head and halos and all of that. Because a lot of this work, as many of you know, is, we were all digging in the trenches, and it took 30 years to get recognized for it. So these are two of the books that Linda wrote, and she was at the very first Cyber Arts Conference where we met. I was playing in a band that had just literally flown directly from Japan to LA, and we didn't know if our equipment was going to make it or not. And Linda was there kind of cheering us on. And she also wrote this DIY book about virtual reality because, if many of you will recall, back in the day, it cost many, many thousands of dollars to try and do any kind of VR application at all. Do you want to say anything else about that?
No.
Okay. All right, so as an homage to Bart Nagel, who I know is out there somewhere. Go, Bart. Bart took this photo of the very first rev of Dekuku, and we had a lot of fun with our glow-in-the-dark sticks, and somebody in Mondo called us chicks with sticks, and that kind of stuck. But we built our own instruments. They were all electronic MIDI controllers, which MIDI had only been invented about 4 years before we started building these instruments. So people really didn't quite know what to make of people playing an instrument and the sound was coming from the speakers, but they weren't really hearing anything coming directly from the stage. So we're going to share a little bit about some of the other show toys that we created in those days.
I have to interrupt. I mean, one of the things that's so engaging about the kind of our shared love for this kind of art, which is participatory, interactive, inclusive, collaborative. Was the kind of the ethos under Dekuku. The band was very much influenced by the musical cultures of West Africa, right, where people didn't separate the audience from the performer. Everybody performed, and there was the saying, right? If you could walk, if you could walk, you could dance. If you could talk, you could sing. Yeah. So Dekuku wanted to break down the barriers between audience and performer by using new interactive technology to allow the audience to take part in the music, to create sounds, and to create visions, and to create the vibe. That was the space we were in. So
Linda became a virtual reality evangelist in those days, and we were working with some of the engineers from SGI, Silicon Graphics, and they created this virtual 3D character for us, and Linda was the voice of that character. And we used to banter on stage, and it was actually a great way to distract from the fact that sometimes we needed to solder a circuit board on stage or do something to keep things going. And this MIDI ball, you're going to see kind of the first iterations of it. We used to toss it in the audience, people would play it, and it was a way that the audience could jam with the band.
Do we have audio on that? Yeah.
The next step is to plug in the audience, to play the fans in the stands like one giant instrument. Tonight, the band opens for the Grateful Dead with an interactive performance.
Midway through their performance, Dekuku tosses out into the audience an enormous bundle of radios and sensors packed inside helium balloons. They call it their MIDI ball. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. Bouncing the ball sends signals to a computer on stage that translates the action into music. The women keep playing, but the audience determines how their instruments sound. One world. Dekuku has just released their first CD album with guest appearance by Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead. But you have to see them in person to have a MIDI ball.
Yeah, so that show was actually the first time the Grateful Dead had 3D computer graphics behind their show. And that was 1992. That was the Mardi Gras show at the Oakland Coliseum, and they liked seeing those graphics so much, they asked our crew, which were the Raster Masters, one of whom is here with us tonight, Maggie Hoppy, to stay on and to do the graphics for their show as well.
With a mind of its own.
Ooh, thank you, baby.
So your part of the show it's highly entertaining, but
likewise, I'm sure.
There are three things that control Rigby. One is audio. There's a woman, Linda Jacobson, who speaks into a microphone, and the microphone audio level directly controls Rigby's lip movements.
Ron Fisher wrote the software program that brings Rigby to life.
Hi, everyone.
Second thing is Rigby's head motion is controlled by the mouse here. I can move Rigby around like this and make him look left or look right on stage. And the last piece is this device called a space ball here. You just press on it, and I can make Rigby's eyes close, look around, look left, look right, smile, frown.
I am absolutely kind of like the fifth Beatle, the sixth Dekuku, a member of the band, a virtual Dekuku.
Okay.
What do you call a 5-woman band that makes...
Shut up. Okay. We're not going to talk about her anymore.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
It's a segue. So we had a lot of fortunate light on us, and yes, Dekuku was very innovative in using technology and the arts in new ways to allow audience interaction. But let's face it, a lot of the attention was paid to us because it was all women, and we were in a male-dominated culture. And most of our audiences were dominated by men, and we played at a lot of tech bro events. So it's important to acknowledge that this scene really has not had a lot of space for women in it, and we've taken up some space. So we wanted to take a moment to honor the women who came before us, whose work as scholars and interactivists influenced our approach to live digital theater.
One of those people was Brenda Laurel, of course, who wrote Computers at Theater, one of the seminal works that really influenced a lot of people in the art of human-computer interaction design, and before there really was a field of HCI back in the day. And then, much to my surprise, Dukuku was the house band at Interval Research, and every time I would ask anybody about the work they were doing there, they'd say, well, we'd have to kill you, so we can't really talk about it. Right, Lee? I see you back there. So we ended up actually, years later, around 1997, I started working at Interval myself, and Brenda was there working on a project called Purple Moon, and she was doing a lot of research on young tweens and the work that girls were doing in video games, which was not really a thing back then. So another big inspiration was Shar Davies. Did any of you see her work, Osmos, out there? Yeah. You actually put on a full body harness and a headset, and she was inspired by, being underwater, and so breathing was one of the modalities that she used to be able to control the environment, the virtual environment around. So you would lean right and left and breathe in and out as a way of navigating in these virtual worlds.
Yeah, she also brought a lot of soft edges and light colors and the sense of biophilic love into the environment. Because until then, virtual environments were really hard, and they were polygonal based and really kind of harsh. And she softened everything up and used the breath to bring the body into the environment.
Yeah, so one of the other things that I really like is that she called her experience immersense, and that people who were engaged in it were immersant, as opposed to users, which is kind of I don't know, it's a very cold term, I think, for the people that you're trying to get to engage in art. So I love that. So use it. Anybody familiar with Lynn Hirschman, Leeson? Yeah. Has anybody actually seen this work? Yeah.
Another interesting interface.
Yeah. So this gun, this rifle, was used in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Gulf War. And when you look through the viewfinder, you see all these atrocities of war. And when you go to click and pull the trigger, it actually takes a photo of you and superimposes it onto the imagery that you're seeing, so that you shift from being the aggressor to becoming the victim, which is really incredible. Yeah. And she was here in the Bay Area for a while. She went to SF State and did really cool work. So this was a project Linda did, a study with a whole group of people. Why don't you tell us some more about that?
This is fast forwarding to about 8 years ago, both these photographs. What fascinates us is the ability to bring the body into contact with the data and with the ideas, and interesting ways of interfacing with that data is really what characterizes a good immersive environment, virtual reality environment. But the problem, I believe, is that it has been very lonely. Cyberspace has been a lonely place. Now, I guess that's what they're trying to do with the metaverse, to move from cyberspace to the metaverse and then have a lot of people in there. But we're still early days of that. But it's an exciting time for those of us who are trying to advance the state of the art, to bring in our whole bodies and to allow multiple people to interact with each other inside the same virtual environment at the same time. That's what's happening on the left side here. This is a photograph of 3 people at a senior living community, and I was demoing a group immersive environment that provided relaxation and virtual travel for older adults who can no longer get out. And I took the photo while I was serving up their environment on a tablet. It's an Android. It was an Android OS. And this was the time. Do you guys remember, like, when Google Cardboard was hot, and then Samsung came out with the Gear, and you'd slip your phone into the, in front of the Fresnel lenses? That's what that was. And the 3 people, it's cool. They're twisting their bodies around. So it's a kinesthetic kind of experience, even though their bodies are not being reflected inside the environment. But they're all in the same environment, and they're talking to each other about what they're all seeing, saying, oh, look over there. Look, check this out. So that is the promise. We haven't reached it yet. On the right side is a prototype version of a $40,000 commercial product that's a tactile feedback glove, tactile and force feedback. And this was made by a company that went belly up, like so many VR companies, and burned through their VC money, but not before creating an amazing product that used basically pneumatic computing, air, to fill hundreds of tiny air bladders lining the inside of the gloves with air that was programmed to match whatever you were seeing in the headset. And you could feel things with great realism, texture, and then there was force as well. That's where we're going to. That's the promise. Bean keeps saying, where's the promise?
Yeah, so and all this inspiration by the hands and using gloves, there's so much that's going on in this whole area of development. It has been. This is almost 3 decades worth of different developments going all the way back to the Power Glove.
Doesn't this all kind of look alike? It's hard. These pictures like span 25 years. But it all looks alike to me. So I'm not so sure that that this was a real step forward. Personally, I just want shut his mouth. But that was me in 1992, and I was with Chris Alice, another cyberpunk from Autodesk. And we have some amazing companies. I mean, the industry exists because of our communities here. That's all I want to say. Go. Well,
so yeah, a lot of amazing pioneers, one of whom is in the audience tonight, Pamela Z, who uses custom MIDI controllers, is still using them today, and actually has a gig in a couple weeks. Check her out. She's out in the audience there, and she'll give you a card with a QR code on it. Mia Masaoka, many of you probably know Mia's work, and she was doing the music of Gakkaku, the Japanese court music, and extended laser kodo work that she was doing, and with strings and bowing. And anybody hear of Laetitia Sonami? She's a French artist who was at STIME in the 90s, the Studio for Electro-Instrumental Music, and I was there for a short time as a co-director. But she did various versions of the Lady's Glove, and this is one of her early prototypes there that she did.
See, this is what we need, people getting, this is why gray area is so vital, because we only make progress with these devices when they're in the hands of artists. And that's been true over the past 30 years, and it is going forward. So thank you for being here, and thank Pamela and everybody here who's using technology for artistic expression and connection.
So another artist who actually developed an instrument that was called the hands and was the founder of STIME, was Michelle Weisvich. And a group of us started a conference in 2001 called the New Interfaces for Musical Expression to create a way that people around the world could share a lot of the different controllers that they were making to share music. So NIME conference is still going on if any of you out there building cool things. So when Linda and I first started talking about this, one of the topics we wanted to touch on was what happened to the promise of cyberspace? Here we are all these years later, we're still wearing these giant headsets. We're still kind of alone in cyberspace. What do you think about that, Linda?
I agree with the voice in the audience.
What did the voice in the audience say?
I think, was it capitalism?
Oh, is that what happened?
You know, it's an interesting thing. There's funding for the creation of the new devices, but there hasn't been a lot of integration and delivery. There's a lot of ongoing development, and materials science has advanced to a point where at least the eyewear is becoming a lot less bulky, a lot more powerful, a lot more comfortable. But it still has a ways to go, and I think VR. I don't like headsets personally. I don't believe that's the promise of VR at all. And we'll talk about that. Thank you. That said, have you guys tried the Apple Vision Pro yet?
Sure.
Yes, a good, bad? Yeah, there's not enough content for it yet. And so here's the other thing. What happened when we got started with this 30 years ago was the establishment of a lot of, and you mentioned this, a lot of academic programs in universities and colleges in which people are starting to explore the basic language and the techniques involved in moving beyond flatland and moving into 4 dimensions and beyond. So it's taking a while to come up with that language, come up with the techniques, come up with the consistent interfaces. So, I mean, it's gonna. All right, that's been going on for a long time, military applications, and it's in a large part because of the military applications that other applications in other fields were developed. So the Air Force developed flight simulators in 1929 on like the kind of rides you would see outside of Woolworth, you know, a little thing that would buck up and down, and then they put them in headsets. But now that kind of science and technology is being used for training surgeons, for training first responders, for training people who we want to have train over and over again. So that's happening. You remember I used to say, well, that Cuckoo put the funk in dysfunctional?
I don't remember that, Linda. But I
now,
like it.
All right, so now I like to say, let's put the fun in functional and use practical tools that leverage visualization, full body interaction, data simulation, process simulation to achieve functionality. And there's a lot of promise now in the use of simulation in healthcare, in the arts, in elder care, in education and training, and it's starting to turn up in new ways as fantastic experiences in in place, location-based, place-based
Has anybody
installations.
experienced this?
This is amazing.
The ISS one, Felix and Paul Studios, Space Explorers. Like, that was the first time I ever felt like VR can be really, really cool. Like, we could have an amazing experience that there was no other way to have this unless you went to the moon and you were up at the space station. So it was really awesome.
True suspension of disbelief,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Almost.
We put this list of companies because these were the foundational startups that made the industry what it was. The very first commercial virtual reality companies that produced the products that captured the attention of the world. So and many of you know these people, and some of their colleagues are here. So I just wanted to acknowledge the people, Jaron Lanier and Ann Lasko-Harville, Dan Kotke, you're here, and Lenny Lipton, the guy who wrote Puff the Magic Dragon. He was stereographics. So a lot of great people. We stand on their shoulders.
So one thing we wanted to also address was, like, what are the opportunities out there for artists now? And you know, there's still a lot of problems that people are trying to solve. They're trying to use VR, AR, AI, extended realities to try and address. And some of the ones, like the promise of data visualization, some of the things that are going on with AI-generated music and cloning of real musicians' voices is kind of mind-boggling. If you haven't heard some of this, like, there's a platform called Elf Tech where you can actually put in your music and they'll overlay Grimes' voice on top of it, and then you can share your royalties with her 50-50. But there's new models out there for what you can do musically. Yeah. It's a song called In Another World by Kotomi. But there's a number of artists who are taking this similar kind of approach, because the record labels certainly aren't paying very much, and every hit on Spotify you get a fraction of a penny, maybe. Okay, so some of the other promises are in the areas of data visualization, where you can use it for environmental advocacy, and came across an artist, Jiabao Lee, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her name right, but she spent some time in Alaska and wanted to create this experience where you're actually in a kayak and you're controlling your movement through a glacier. And as the person ages, she created a VR film, and then she created an interactive installation out of that. And I thought this was a really interesting way to tell the story of disappearing glaciers and this person who saves a little piece of ice in the freezer as she gets older. Anyways, stellar experiences. Some of you have been to the Sphere. Fast forward all these years later. We're all here. Thank you, Ken, for inviting us to be a part of this. And thank you all for being here.